when I say, okay, well, how come you're not doing something with your parent? A lot of times the answer I get back, whether it's mom or dad, is, well, they're playing their games on an Xbox, or, I get mom's on her phone or her tablet, watching TV, so there's an awful lot of the wonderful technology that just kind of takes the parent out of, being an active parent.
Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
And I am Eric.
Eric and Lucas are licensed professional counselors. And the title of today, we've been going through this series on things that dads wish that they hadn't done with their, or that push their sons. I'm so messed up today. Things that dads do that push their sons away.
There it is.
And this one in particular is being apathetic. And
Yep. Today's podcast is brought to you by the word apathetic.
Yes, and I was just saying, that is not a word I use.
And I was just about to ask you before we hit record, do you know what that word means?
I'm not fully sure. I have the context clues here, maybe not caring. Yeah. It's just not I don't know. I just don't hear people.
If I had my laptop, I could look it up, but I think you stole it.
True. It's in the other room. So. But yeah, so just not caring.
Mm-hmm.
Not
like the average American voter.
Okay.
Wow.
You said you wanted a political podcast, and that is the closest I'm willing to get.
There you go. So from a dad standpoint, does this just come down?
Do you want the actual definition?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Is it from the OED?
Please.
It's from Google.
It's from Google. Oh, Google. Well, it might be biased then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So apathetic, having or showing little or no feeling or interest.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you said not caring.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah.
Close.
So basically, from a dad standpoint, is this just like the, stereotypical sitcom dad who's sitting there and chaos and things are happening around him and the kids are doing whatever and he just doesn't care because he's just going to watch his game until he goes to sleep and say, bring me a beer, and that's just it? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
He speaks up when the noise or chaos interrupts the flow of watching the game.
Okay.
So yes.
Yes.
So again, Eric, so this is your list, right? So I'm going to ask you this question. Is this a particular and unique dad problem as opposed to a mom problem?
No.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, you were talking about the stereotypical sitcom dad. The
Yeah.
stereotypical sitcom mom doesn't have this problem per se, but they could.
There's a lot of kids that I've worked with, and I'm like, okay, so, what'd you do with your mom this week? Or what'd you do with your dad this week? And a lot of answers that I get back are nothing.
That's kind of like your favorite parent question when you work with kids. It's like, how much time are you spending with your kid? And that's really what this topic is this is what happens when you don't.
Right. And when I say, okay, well, how come you're not doing something with your parent? A lot of times the answer I get back, whether it's mom or dad, is, well, they're playing their games on an Xbox, or, I get mom's on her phone or her tablet, watching TV, so there's an awful lot of the wonderful technology that just kind of takes the parent out of, being an active parent.
I was talking to a client yesterday who there's a parent in this story who just doesn't seem to be willing to be committed to the other adult relationship, but the kids too. It's like the dude just wants to go out and kind of act like a single parentless 21-year-old. And that's not exactly what this is, because it's supposed to be being apathetic towards their children. Right. This isn't being apathetic towards all things. This is as particularly as it relates to your kids. They'll raise themselves, or somebody else has got it, or, there's a show on, they're fine.
Well, and here's what I want to jump in and say. These are not bad parents. Yeah. It's just that, as parents, as adults, there are so many things in this world that are interesting and cool, and we can get involved in, and we can get, good at, and we can be interested in. And sometimes it pushes out our children, as to one of those things that we could be good with, interested in, help to be able to develop, really put in as much energy as we do in the other things that we're interested in. Because it's just that's a part of it, is that one way that we lose our kids is that we let that time slip away and we forget that was something that maybe we should have really been intentional about how we spent time with our kids.
That's probably a good contrasting word to apathetic. And I think we've
Absolutely.
used it a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's a good word, it's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's easy to beat up on bad parents, but it's I have to imagine that all of us have done this to some degree, right?
And that's why I say this is not a characteristic of a bad parent, and we're not trying to judge parents. But this is one of those things, it's almost like you can just enjoy life and suddenly a year or two down the road, you realize, oh my gosh, I gained 50 pounds. How did that happen? And it doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
It just means that there were some things in there that you just didn't notice, and not paying attention could be one way of putting that. And so it's one of these pieces where it's like, I get parents that are like, oh my gosh, what do I do when my kid's a teenager? And I'm like, well, right now they're 6,
right?
So I'm not sure quite what you're worried about, but you're telling me you think the rebellion is going to be really big and you're going to have really big behaviors. And so the first thing I'm going to say is, how much time are you spending with your kid intentionally? Because that reduces any of these behaviors you're afraid of when they're teenagers. Because it's not an automatic that they just rebel and do all these things. Will they be naughty kids? Yes. Do adults do the wrong thing and have to, be able to make amends or fix that? Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not looking for perfection, but a lot of the rebellion things that we're afraid of teenagers is because they're not getting the time. And so they figured out, okay, fine, I know how to make you pay attention to me.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, even small children do those kinds of things.
learn
Like
it when
attention
they're
is
kids.
attention.
Yep.
If I knock over the potted plant, I get attention.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like we can become so my son, he can play on his own pretty well. And we right now in our living room we have these little slides with cars, and that's kind of what's going on in the floor. And so even last night I realized he's there playing, I'm sitting on my phone scrolling through Facebook, and we're in the same room. I'm keeping an eye on him, but I'm not really engaging him. I'm not really. And so when I realized that, then I put that down, and then I said, he did a car race, and I said, whoa, cool. And then he came over and fist bumped me. And then I'm like, that's cool. So then I got down, we played, we did the thing. But I think sometimes we just have to somehow put reminders there that you can. And like you were saying, I wasn't being a bad parent. I'm sitting there, he's playing, it's all safe environment, everything's fine. But I could have done a better job at being engaged, being there, and kind of like you were saying, by continuing to develop that relationship and being there and giving that attention, that's going to prevent so many problems down the road.
And then there's my kids where I'm trying to work on a project over here, and my littlest one is like, "Daddy, come play now. Can you come play now?" I'm like, "Kid, I really have to get this done." So
They're
I mean, and
demanding it.
kids do want your attention,
Right,
and things
absolutely.
go better when you do engage with them. And then there's a place where child, I need 30 seconds where you're not climbing on my head.
Right.
That's a different problem than this one.
Yeah, and I think some of this also lends itself to why it's important to come up with some structure where you can get some of that time to do the things that you need to do, where someone else or a spouse or a friend, where someone takes over, and you can have that time so that then when you're with your kids, you can be more engaged. But
The opposite bookend of not doing anything with your kid is doing everything with your kid. And it is the polar opposite, and you don't want that either. I remember the father say, because he had 2 little girls, they were like 5 and 6. And he's like, I am trying to work on cars at the apartment to pay the rent. And every 5 minutes, they want me to come play with them. What do I do? And so we talked about how you establish that, there are times where daddy has to work.
Yeah.
Has to, and that can be, whatever your project is, there's just times that you need that. And then you begin to help them understand when those times are. What's going to help them is to understand that if, like with him, he put up a clock and he said, when it gets to this time, I'm going to come play for this amount of time. But if you don't follow through,
but then do also follow through. Yeah. Otherwise,
you have to have that time that they can count on, because they have to go, okay, in 30 minutes, we get to play. We get to do this, and they, regardless of how young, will begin to learn that is going to come in there. And so then that helps them to be able to, wait and, then play by themselves and so forth. I was going to say, like how you were talking about, I was scrolling on, Facebook. Old school, before we got these things, means that we're in the room. We may be doing something, but there's a lot more engagement, kind of like what you did. You were engaging him, and that draws us then, in an old school way, a lot of times more into their world in a variety of different ways.
Right.
My dad was always present around doing his projects, but he was willing to be able to engage, at different times.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things that I've really tried to pay attention to. I see all these things where they kind of show how fast. There's a lot of videos right now that are really cool. We should probably put some on our social, but they show how fast just the kid grows up, and how it seems like, oh, you're just waiting for this and waiting for that, but then it goes by so fast that you really regret that time. So I've really tried to be intentional about just going, hey, I want to enjoy every moment of every stage. I want to be engaged. I don't want to be off in Facebook land or watching TV. And the reality is when you do that, it changes the relationship with the kid, and there's so many fun things that you can do. And then I think, wow, I'm glad that I'm able to be here doing this. And it just sort of changes your perspective. So if someone is listening to this and they think, wow, I've really kind of missed the boat, what would the encouragement be? Just start trying to pay more attention, just do something?
I think with so many of these things that we're talking about, like, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Right? If you have grown kids.
Yep.
Like if your children are 25. Right? Like, figure out ways to, like, maybe invite them over, depending on how far away they live, for dinner, or set up,
go out to lunch.
Right, like, we need to have a family. Like, we're gonna have family board game night. Mom, I'm 25. I don't care. I want to see. I mean, like,
right.
All of this stuff. Like, start making steps towards more of it. I mean, age appropriately. All those things.
You have to know the child, enough to know what they enjoy.
Yeah.
I had two of the kids that I had, then when their grandmother would come into town, she would be like, okay, I'm going to take you guys out to lunch. And they're like, oh, that's great. And she would ask the kids, well, where do you want to go? And they would say what they were hungry for. And she would go, oh, we're going to go for seafood. They hate seafood. Every time.
Like, grandma, holy schmolies.
Yeah. And so that's not going to be a good bonding moment.
Right.
But yes, you can. I mean, I've had clients who had estranged adult kids, and we worked on different ways that they could be able to, reconnect with that relationship. One boy that came into our house, he was 18. And so to be able to connect with him, I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. He had an idea himself. Now, he loved mechanics and he loved cars, and he thought it would be great if I would go out there in the garage and work on his car with him. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand how not great that is. And he's like, oh, no, we can do it. It's going to be a great bonding moment. I'm like, okay. And so I went out there with him.
He knew how cars worked.
He knew how cars work. And so he's under the car, and he goes, hey, I need a 5/8 wrench. And he put his hand out. And I'm like, what the frick is a 5/8 wrench? So I just grabbed something, and I put it in his hand. And he took it under, and then he put it out. And he goes, that's a screwdriver.
That's a screwdriver.
Oh,
that's a whisk broom.
He goes, something that has these on the ends of it. And I'm just like looking around. So I grab one and I hand it to him. And he's like, yeah, that's not it.
That's not it either.
Yeah. And so he throws his hand out again, and I put a crescent wrench in his hand. And he comes out and he goes, you don't know what these tools are. I'm like,
it took you 3 tries. Good job.
Do you remember when I said this is not going to be a good bonding thing? You don't understand. And he goes, and that's where he kind of came up with a good rendition. He goes, you know what would be good? Because, I mean, he goes, the biggest thing I was looking forward to is just being able to talk about how things are in life.
Right. He's like, I wasn't actually here to have you help me work on the car.
Well, he was like, that would have been cool,
That would have been cool, too.
But if you just come out and, we can visit, I'm like, that I can do.
Right. Yeah, it's like, just be here, but don't touch the tools.
And so there was a couple days a week for an hour and a half. I'd go out in the garage with him, and, he'd share to rant, or, however that went. And it went great. I mean, he really, really enjoyed it.
My brother and I at one point went out to somewhere that we were going to go that was like an hour away. And then it turned out that the thing that we were going to go do, like, I don't remember what, I think there was like there was like a hatch of bugs or something, and we were being swarmed. So we that didn't work out. And then we drove back. My brother said, well, that's fine. I just wanted to sit in the car and talk to you anyway. I was like, the thing at the end wasn't like the point in his head. It was like, I just wanted to hang out with you anyway.
Right.
And like, to your point, like, okay, well, we can't work on the car, but I still want you here.
Right. Yeah. Because it's the interaction. It's the connection that's there. Another boy we had, he was incredibly hard to connect with, but he came with an Xbox. And it was in his room. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. What games do you like to play? And he's like, I don't know. I really haven't played much. And it was something that someone thought that it would be really good for him to have, and they talked him into buying it, and so he had it, but he didn't really play. I noticed that one of the games was football. And so I'm like, you play this much? He goes, yeah, I've never played that. You like football? Not really. Okay, let's try.
Let's go out to seafood. Oh, wait.
And so we played. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But the thing that I knew was different is he'd never played. Yeah. And he hadn't played much of any of the games. And I had a sense about him that he didn't play long if he didn't quickly become an expert. And so for the first couple of months, because 8 to 9 in our house was kind of a quiet time. And so I would go to his room 8 to 9 several times a week, and we would play. Took 2.5 months. It was a lot of work. I'm going to tell you right now. It's a lot of work. 2.5 months, 3 times a week, every way I could possibly throw the game. Every way. And
so he could learn.
Yeah. Because I don't generally throw games, but with him, he really needed time to be able to learn because of the different things that he struggled with. So about 3 months in, he is playing this game like a pro.
Playing well.
He's playing well. And now we really have some good football games, and he's really enjoying it. And the other kids in the house would come and watch, and he's doing some incredible things and incredible moves, and he loved it. That was the primary time that I spent with him. And now if he just said, hey, can we do something else? No problem. Yeah. But he would be coming to look for me. Hey, you going to come and play?
Right. I got to come beat you at that football game.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really enjoyed when working with middle school and high school is in the same way that adults, in this case, get into things and then they don't pay attention, whether that be your games or your Facebook or whatever. Kids also really get buried in devices and get buried in their stuff. And then sometimes it's easy for us to say, well, that's great. They're pacified. I'm pacified. We're in the same room, but nobody's together. And so it was always amazing. I could take groups that really were struggling in kids that couldn't have friendships, that were struggling with relationships with the adults, with all of this, get rid of the devices and go out to a campground or go out somewhere for 4 or 5 days, build like dams in creeks and just do like just stuff together. And it was totally transformational.
Yep.
These kids that would just, everyone's going, I don't know why they just sit there buried in their thing. They're not doing whatever. All of a sudden,
you let them.
Yeah. And all of a sudden they're having the time of their life gathering rocks to make a swimming hole in a creek. And it's just so much fun. And so that has always been sort of one of my resets, is the idea of, hey, a great reset is just leave the stuff, go somewhere, do something. And at first it can be a little rough because everyone's like, oh, you know, I want my stuff. Oh, yeah, this is boring, whatever. But use your ingenuity and your creativity and come up with some stuff. And then before long, they'll be having a blast, putting sticks in fires, and sometimes just the
poking
old,
each other with sticks.
Yeah, just the old stuff
that are on fire.
fun.
That are on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So
sometimes you got to tamp that down.
Right. So spend time. Yeah. What were you saying?
Well, no, I totally agree that's a great idea. And with boys, working with our hands is one of the biggest ways we process emotions.
Yeah.
Building dams in creeks with rocks.
Building dams in creeks, that's a great idea. When I was in high school, my buddies, I had a lot of party buddies, and, they were bored one summer, and they're like, what do we do? And I'm like, hey, I got an idea. And I went to the library and I created this kind of, it's a treasure hunt, but it's not really a treasure hunt, but, scat kind of, but still.
Were you looking for books or for random things you placed in the library?
Well, see, they were looking for who it was. So it's kind of like a who search type thing. And the person they were, the correct answer is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay. And so I created these 2 different avenues for each of these 2 teams that had all kinds of things of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's life and study, all kinds of clues.
I'd call it a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, I mean, and that can work. It took, like 3 or 4 hours, and they loved it.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great thing that they enjoyed doing. I don't think we always think about, well, what can I do? It's just become our electronics. And that's the thing. The more engaging that you want to be as a parent, your kids want to spend time with you, and even if their first response is that's boring, they may just it's going to take a little bit for the effects of the immediate gratification of the electronics to kind of wear down.
Yeah.
And then they get into, oh, wait, I'm with my dad. I'm with my mom. Okay, we're doing things. Okay, this is fun. And being able to explore, different ways to do things with you that include more of their senses.
I remember one of the conversations we had around dedicate time to hanging out with your children, even if they don't want to, which might mean sitting in their doorway and kind of telling them, I'm here to hang out with you, and I'm not going away for another 20 minutes. Your ball.
Yep, exactly.
And that's the we were talking about apathetic being at one end, and that's intentional and engaged and appropriately pushy.
And, you're going to get some resistance at times, especially if you're just beginning to do this. My son, who has Asperger's and a couple other things, catching anything was going to be a problem.
You mean physically?
Physically, catching it, those fine motor skills, it's something he struggled with. And so I would take him out every day for, 15, 20 minutes. And I got the softest balls I could because most of them bounced off his head as he was trying to catch them. And we just continued to play catch. He didn't always want to.
Yeah.
But I did keep my eye out for what's something that would be maybe a little more appealing to him. And so Nerf, I think they still have it, but they had a black football, and they have glasses that you put on. And one set of glasses emits green, and the other set has a red light. and they catch the reflective on the football.
Oh.
And so you see green and red depending on your glasses. So you can play it both during the day and at night. He loved that.
Interesting.
He thought
cool.
that
Not
was
familiar
the
with that
greatest.
product.
Yeah, I'll have to bring it. I still have it.
You
at home.
still have it?
Oh gosh,
That's
yeah.
cool.
Let's do it.
And so that engaged him more. And now, at 22, it was just the other day, I just tossed something his way, and he's just like, "Choom." It was like ninja, "Choom." I got it.
Right. Well, and that's kind of a different conversation, but like your son has deficits, but you stretched him in those deficits anyway.
Exactly.
And like, that's just a good human principle of like, let's see how far we can go. And like, I'm not good at it. I don't want to. Well, yeah, okay, but let's push. Let's see how far we can go here.
Yeah, I love it.
That's a different podcast.
So spend time with your kids. Don't be the stereotypical sitcom dad.
No, don't be apathetic, Josh.
Don't be apathetic.
Today's podcast brought to you by the word apathetic.
Apathetic. So, all right. Well, don't be apathetic. And if you enjoyed this or you have comments, please leave them on whatever platform you're listening to. Hit the like or subscribe button. And then definitely go and check us out on the App Store. You can search Empowering Choices Parenting, and you can find our app. And we will see you on the next episode.